Hello, Booktube, and welcome to the continuation of my 2020 library tour. Today, I'm going to show you the Not History Nonfiction, or Assorted Nonfiction. So I basically have all of my fiction over here, even though The Secret History of Wonder Woman by Joe Laporte probably should go with these books that I'm about to show you than sticking over with history, but I'll get that sorted out when I do my library rearrangement at the end of the month or beginning of next year. So let's look at the books. So these books are currently on my wall shelf over on the opposite wall facing me. So first is Dionysus, Archetypal Image of Indestructible Life by Carl Karenyi. I've had this book in my collection since high school, and I've never actually gotten around to reading it until this year. And even though in a lot of ways this book's arguments, its archaeology, its theory is probably quite dated by now, this book is fantastic and certainly inspirational. I drew so many ideas from this book that it was quite interesting. It does drag a bit towards the end, but otherwise this is a really good book, surprisingly. Next is another book by Carl Karenyi, The Gods of the Greeks. This book is rather than focusing on just one of the Olympians, this one looks at all of them and gives little bits of myth here and there with some analysis. It's been a while since I've read it, but I've quite enjoyed reading it when I have. Next is a work of literary theory, Anatomy of Criticism, 4 essays by Northrop Frye. This is one of the most important works of literary theory from the mid-20th century. Although more of an outlier than a work that really sort of kept its importance. Generally it's, the main sort of literary theories that have dominated the 20th century have been sort of the new criticism, and then structuralism, post-structuralism, deconstruction, and the current sort of literary theory of everything, which is sort of culture studies, which combines post-structuralism, deconstruction, Marxism, post-colonial studies, feminism, queer theory, the works. So in a way, this book has sort of, I think, fallen out of favor. Although there are still some interesting ideas. Although when I tried to read it this past year, I did bail on it. So anyway, maybe its estimation has certainly fallen in my estimation. Next is The Art of Language Invention by David J. Peterson. I picked this book up in the hopes that it could help me better with creating fictional languages. As a writer of science fiction and fantasy, creating original languages is vital. And while I did glean some insight into how to do it, this book is more for language invention as a hobby, and it's rather dry and a bit headache inducing, or sleep inducing. Next is Visions of War, Picturing Warfare from the Stone Age to the Cyber Age by David D. Perlmutter. I picked this up for one of my first classes in college. It was an introduction to liberal studies on war, and this book was one of the sort of I don't think it was necessarily a core text as much as it might have been more for the attendant writing and rhetoric class. Or we might have talked about this at the very end, but it was quite good. Not entirely sure why I still have it, though, but I really ought to give it another go. Next is Imagined Life, a speculative scientific journey among the exoplanets in search of intelligent aliens, ice creatures, and supergravity animals by James Trefil and Michael Summers. This book is pretty much what it says on the subtitle. It's basically an theoretical exploration of what life on exoplanets could be, and it is quite fascinating and enjoyable, and I loved every moment of reading this book, short though it is. And now we end the Assorted Nonfiction with the Booktube Prize. So over the course of 2020, I have been a judge on the 2020 Booktube Prize, Nonfiction. And I judged all the rounds, and I've quite enjoyed it. I did have to, my rule was that I was going to try to use the library to pick up the books because I was afraid if I bought any of them, I would feel a certain obligation to give them a little boost. But it turned, and unfortunately, due to the nature of libraries and not having the books in or having them check out, and many people ahead of me, or in COVID, that there were some books I did have to pick up. Fortunately, though, they were all quite good, and I really enjoyed them all. So, anyway, so I pretty much have all of the books I bought for the Booktube Prize here, except for Sea People, which is over in history. So, anyway, so let's look at the books. First up is Me by Elton John. This is a autobiography of Elton John, and it is amazing. I absolutely love this book. Elton John is, while his writing might not necessarily be terribly polished, it is just so earnest and so emotional, and this is a wow book. Next is Catch and Kill, Lies, Spies, and a Conspiracy to Protect Predators by Ronan Farrow. This book is really good, infuriating, and amazing. Yes. Next is The Yellow House by Sarah Broom. Again, this book is fantastic. It's a memoir of Sarah house in New Orleans, the Yellow House, and her family, and their time in the Yellow House, and their life beyond the Yellow House when the Yellow House was destroyed during Hurricane Katrina. It was Katrina. This is amazing. And finally, and probably my favorite book to come out of the Booktube Prize, Underland, A Deep Time Journey by Robert McFarlane. This is McFarlane's journey into various underground places across Britain and around the Northern Hemisphere, and it is just such an amazing book. I loved every moment of reading it, and I am looking forward to checking out what else he has. So that was the Assorted Nonfiction. I'll be back in a few minutes with the classics. I do mean classics in this case, and that'll be it for today. So yeah. Oh, and since I'm talking about the Booktube Prize, I do believe there is still time that if you would like to be a judge for the Booktube Prize. I think there's still some time to sign up for it, and I will hopefully remember to leave a link to the Booktube Prize channel down below. I was a judge this past year, loved every moment of it, so I highly, highly recommend judging for the prize. So in Booktube, I'm going to go clean the shelf off and put these books back, and then be back real soon with another video. Until then, have a great afternoon, and please stay safe.